Here's what no one tells you about the Kira Talent interview. It's not a test of knowledge, it's a test of strategy. If you don't use your time wisely, you risk blending in with the rest of the crowd. In this video, I'm going to share a simple formula you can use to stand out and impress the admissions committee. Let's dive in. Hi, I'm your host, Caitlin Anderson, admissions consultant and Oxford MBA who has helped hundreds of graduate school applicants win offers with scholarships to their dream schools. If you've never heard of the Kira Talent interview, here's a quick overview. Kira Talent is a digital platform where business schools assess applicants using timed video and written responses. The format is straightforward. For the video questions, you're going to get a prompt, a certain amount of time to read and think about your response, and then the camera comes on and you have to record your answer. Usually, the amount of time you're given to think is about 30 to 45 seconds, varies with each school. And the amount of time you have to respond is usually a minute to 2 minutes in length. Sounds simple enough, right? Unfortunately, you most often will not know the questions you will be asked before the interview. Some schools will give you one of the maybe 4 questions they plan to ask you ahead of time so you can practice, but that's more rare. And the catch to the Kira interview is that once you start the interview, usually, most commonly, you will not be able to re-record your answers. So whatever happens in that 1 minute or 2 minutes is what the admissions committee will see. That tends to scare most people, but don't worry. There is a formula you can use to prepare so that you have the best chance of nailing your Kira interview. It's a 3-step process. Step 1 is to memorize adaptable stories. Step 2 is to learn to structure your answers very well. And then step 3 is to practice until you are always under time. First, you need to memorize your resume and behavioral stories that can be adapted to a wide variety of questions. So resume stories are what you will say about each item on your resume within 30 seconds to a minute. And that will include your undergraduate degree, why you picked your major, the final project you did, could be your internships or the work experience that you've had, your volunteering experience, and extracurriculars. Behavioral stories will include a time when you took a leadership role, a time when you managed conflict within a team or with your boss, a time when you worked within a diverse team, a time when you came up with an innovative idea, and a time when you failed. So you should have stories prepared for each one of these behavioral experiences. And a hot tip I can give you about the behavioral stories is try to vary them across your experiences. So you have a behavioral story that comes from your academic background, a behavioral story that comes from your professional life, a behavioral story that comes from your volunteering experience, and from your extracurriculars. So it looks like you have a lot to draw from and that you are this multi-dimensional candidate. For every answer you give, you must have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Even if your introduction is just you directly responding to the question, that's fine, but don't just dive into the content. And be sure that you include a conclusion. Approximately 70 to 90% of my students will leave off the conclusion when we first start practicing for the Kira Talent interview. So I always will encourage them to add that conclusion because it sends a very powerful message to the admissions committees that you are in control of your thoughts and the situation, and that you are this confident, refined, mature individual who can express your thoughts and give powerful insights and then wrap it all up with a nice bow, the conclusion. For every claim you make, you must back it up with evidence. And that evidence is gonna come from your resume and your behavioral stories. The other part of structuring your answers is you want to use the framework I call the STARL method to tell your resume and behavioral stories. And this method is based off the very common STAR method. It stands for situation, task, action, result, and lessons learned. Now that's a completely separate topic that I'll make another video about so you can learn how to structure your resume and behavioral stories. But for now, let's move on to step 3. If your school does not disclose exactly how much time you will have for reading and thinking about your answer and then for responding, when you practice for the Kira Talent interview, you should give yourself 30 seconds to read the question and think of your answer, and then give yourself 1 minute to then respond. At this point, you need to time yourself. So get your phone's timer or use an online timer, but you actually must time yourself because that timer runs out much quicker than we all think. All of my students struggle with the timing aspect of the Kira Talent interview. So don't just assume that you can answer under time. Prove it. There are many kinds of Kira questions, so you'll see background, university specific, behavioral, and random questions in your interview. So the way that you can start practicing the timing is pick 3 questions from each category and then rehearse them out loud, timing yourself, until you can get your responses to be under time. Then you will select new, random questions that you've never seen before and practice responding to those. I would encourage you to ask a friend or family member to randomly select questions so you know that you can respond to a question that you've never seen before under time. The Kira Talent interview is the opportunity for you to show who you are beyond the static application materials that you are submitting to the admissions committee. They want to admit friendly professionals. So don't be afraid to let your enthusiasm shine through in the interview. They want engaging, dynamic people, not robots reading scripts. So I will never pass a student in a Kira practice session if they're reading any part of their responses. That's a no-no. And I want to show you an example of a professional setup so you can see what it needs to look like. Take a look here at this individual we've got. He has a very lightly colored background behind him. There's no object in it, so you cannot have pictures hanging on the wall or plants behind you. I want a completely plain background, lightly colored. I once had a student who had a single nail in the wall, and I told him, take that out. So it needs to be completely plain. So just find a plain wall in your house. The other part is that you need to have a lot of light coming onto your face and onto your background. You also want to sit in the very center of the camera's frame, the way that he's doing, and you want to be facing the camera head on, not at an angle, trying to get your best side. So sit in the middle and look at the camera head on. The other thing is you can't have any noise around you, so make sure it's very quiet when you're gonna be doing the Kira interview. And in terms of attire, I tell my students to wear a blue blazer because blue has been proven to be the best color for interviews. So it signals trust and loyalty. And if you put a white button-down shirt underneath that, it's gonna be the perfect setup. If you don't have a blue blazer, the next best option is to use a black blazer with a white or light blue colored button-down shirt underneath. Now, the final thing I'll say about him is he's got a very nice expression on his face, and that's what you want to do as well. So when you're listening, you're not answering a question, make sure that you're not scowling or you don't have an angry look on your face. So practice just having a very pleasant demeanor. Let's talk about the 3 most common mistakes I see. So mistake number one is over-rehearsing your answers. You do not want to sound like you're reading from a script. So you want to practice, but keep it conversational. Mistake number two is not paying close enough attention to the technical setup. That means having bad lighting or too much noise around you or something in your background. All of those things can detract from your answers. And then mistake number three is going over time. You must spend the time you need until you can give every response under that 1 minute mark or 2 minute or 90 second if you know that that's what your school is going to give you. So you're not done until you can say it under time. Now that you know the formula, let me leave you with this. Practice makes you confident. So here's a sample question for you to get started. Describe a time when you worked with a very difficult team member. How did you handle it? So for that question, you will start by using the STARL method to structure your response and highlight your leadership and communication skills. That's it for now. If you would like more personalized help, you can check the links below for my consulting services and prep materials. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your questions in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Good luck with your interview, and thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.